Look for new opportunities. The message to Jamaican manufacturers and exporters this evening amidst news of a 10% tax on Jamaican goods being sent to the United States.
Reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them.
These countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir.
Every available diplomatic channel, including working with our CARICOM brothers and sisters and utilizing the Office of Trade Negotiations to seek to preserve the positions our exporters have secured over decades of deepening trade ties with the United States.
What the U.S. is doing now is not reform. It is rejecting the very system it created.
Hello brothers and sisters, I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from now. Donald Trump has slapped the Caribbean with tariffs. It is 10% tariffs, of course, and he says that these Caribbean leaders have been calling him and licking his ass. I'm using the exact words that he has said, and he says that this is exactly whatever they wanted to see. You in the Caribbean and in Africa, calling them out and begging and asking them to favor you in a way. So let's watch this video, then have a really quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
Message from the Prime Minister comes as the country awaits details on the trade arrangements. The Prime Minister was speaking last evening at the launch of Expo Jamaica.
Here's Andrea Chisholm with the details.
Jamaica, like the rest of the world, has been on edge since U.S. President Donald Trump announced a new tariff structure. The U.S. is Jamaica's largest trading partner, and since 1983, Jamaica has been part of the Caribbean Basin Initiative (CBI), which provides duty-free access for items sent to the U.S. market. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says 90% of Jamaican exports benefit from the CBI. But given Trump's announcement of a 10% tariff on Jamaican goods, that special arrangement is in question.
While the government of Jamaica has not yet received formal notification on the precise implementation procedures, including whether these new tariffs will override existing CBI provisions, we are actively engaging with the United States Trade Representative and other relevant authorities to seek urgent clarification.
The Caribbean Basin Initiative (CBI) was part of discussions with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This was the Prime Minister at the press conference.
The renewal of the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act was raised as a matter of critical importance to trade for ourselves and for all CARICOM member states.
The U.S. law which governs the CBI is set to expire in September 2030. Mr. Rubio did not mention the CBI in his speech, but he said the U.S. was realigning its global trade policy.
And from that will come real opportunities to create new alignments and new trade arrangements and new trade opportunities. And I believe Jamaica is one of those places that together we both stand to benefit.
And so Jamaica awaits clarification on the 10% U.S. tariff set to take effect on April 5. The Prime Minister says a detailed assessment is being carried out.
We will use every available diplomatic channel, including working with our CARICOM brothers and sisters and utilizing the Office of Trade Negotiations to seek to preserve the positions our exporters have secured over decades of deepening trade ties with the United States. Preliminary analysis indicates that some of our top exports may fall under exempted product categories, and we are working to confirm and, where possible, to expand these exemptions. Again, I must emphasize that clarity is still needed on several matters.
Even though global trade has been disrupted, Dr. Holness says the government stands ready to help the business community and gave them this message.
There are opportunities that must be had. There are prospects to be uncovered. And so I urge my manufacturers, my business people, before you start to look at the negative, also look for the opportunities.
Jamaica is among several countries that have been hit with 10% tariffs on its exports to the United States.
The announcement was made late this afternoon by U.S. President Donald Trump. All CARICOM countries have been hit with 10% tariffs, except Guyana, which will get 38%, and Trinidad and Tobago, 12%.
The new tariffs will take effect on Saturday, April 5, and Mr. Trump says it will start a, quote, golden age for America. Now, when contacted, President of the private sector organization of Jamaica, Mitri Siaga, says the organization is awaiting details.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
President Donald Trump unveiling his new tariff policy to the world Wednesday. While speaking to a crowd in the White House Rose Garden, he announced an at least 10% tariff on practically all goods coming into the United States, plus even higher rates on dozens of countries that have the highest trade deficits with the United States.
Reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them.
The president said the United States would use the money generated from tariffs to, quote, reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt.
Now, there's been concern among local economists that the 10% tariff on all exports to the United States could result in a widening of Jamaica's trade deficit. The gap between imports and exports amounted to almost $5 billion last year. And the tariff means Jamaica's exports to that country will become more expensive. Jamaica exported goods valued at $674.2 million to the United States during the first 11 months of 2024.
The Caribbean has always been a key partner of the United States, but recent tariffs imposed by the Trump administration threaten to destabilize that relationship. With global economic uncertainty on the rise, as JP Morgan forecasts a 60% chance of a global recession by 2025, the Caribbean's fragile economies face serious risks. These tariffs, ranging from 10% to 38%, are crippling the region's exports and throwing long-standing trade agreements into turmoil. In this video, let's dive into the history behind these tariffs, the immediate impact of new tariffs on Caribbean economies, and how regional leaders are responding to this crisis. Watch until the end to learn how these economic shocks are reshaping the future of the Caribbean's relationship with the United States and the world. Let's get started. The history of the U.S. tariffs on the Caribbean dates back to the 1980s, when the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act, CBERA, provided duty-free access for products from Caribbean countries to the U.S. market. However, the Liberation Day tariff plans essentially abolished the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act. While CARICOM is hit with a minimum 10% tariff across the board, the U.S. government needs to realize that CARICOM nations have consistently favored U.S. products. CBERA was not only a way for Caribbean exports to remain competitive, but also opened an avenue for American manufacturers who could find profitable markets in the region's small economies. The new tariffs also contradict other agreements, such as the Haitian Hemispheric Opportunity Through Partnership Encouragement, or HELP Act, which gave Haiti duty-free access to American markets for certain apparel. These and other agreements were crucial in shaping the Caribbean economy. A tariff rate of 10% will negatively affect these markets and fragile regional economies and exacerbate social issues. In response to the new tariffs, Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador to the United States stated, quote, deterioration in Haiti's economic circumstances will only increase the Haitian impetus to seek refuge in the U.S. It's also important to note that the Trump administration's formula for calculating tariffs for every country is a tad concerning. A White House press release mentioned how, quote, President Trump will impose an individualized reciprocal higher tariff on the countries with which the United States has the largest trade deficits. In 2024, The US government
that governments use to borrow money on financial markets. Now, they're normally seen as a very safe haven for investors in times of strife, so governments only have to offer a very low interest rate on them. What we saw happening in the last couple of days is a lot of sellers actually in that market, a lot of people offloading those bonds, which caused some alarm and some questions about financial stability in the US potentially further down the line. So therefore, many are thinking that that actually spooked the president. Also, a big holder of those bonds is China. So was China actually retaliating in that way? So has he tried to calm the markets down by announcing this pause? You heard that phrase, it's all about the art of the deal. But let me tell you, when you talk to businesses out there, what they actually say is that he's created this vacuum now in which uncertainty is thriving, and therefore they're paralyzed by fear and anxiety. Do they invest? Do they actually get the kind of machinery, upskill workers in the way the president wants to guarantee the long-term success of America? Or frankly, will they be wrong-footed in perhaps maybe a matter of not days, but hours? So if that was actually his aim, then frankly, it may be backfiring.
And on China, I mean, these tariffs were 125%. The White House say actually the total, when you take into consideration earlier tariffs of 20%, it all adds up to 145. Well, I mean, it's whopping, it's eye-watering, whatever numbers you look at. And we are in this trade war now between the United States and China, the two biggest global economic powers. What are the consequences of that for the rest of the world?
Huge, Ben, in a sentence, or in a word rather. Do you remember that phrase, conscious uncoupling? I think it was Gwyneth Paltrow who used it about her divorce many years ago. This is what's happening here. China and the US between them account for a third of global goods, right? So you've got this separation between the two of them getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And as a result of that, what you're seeing is disruption on either side. Now, we're hearing all sorts of reports about Chinese companies rushing to try and relocate production, for example, or figure out how much extra they can charge American consumers without frankly going bust. And that can cause all sorts of disruption, given the global nature of supply chains, given that these companies sell all over the world to buyers around the world too. American consumers account for 1 in 6, 7 dollars of all of those spent in the world. So if they're not buying, other countries aren't selling. So this may look like it's kind of slightly, over there, thousands of miles away from many countries, and there's a pause elsewhere. But let's not forget, there are some severe consequences that many are going to feel in the weeks and months to come.
All right, Darshini, for the moment, thank you very much.
The US has imposed a blanket 10% tariff on imports for nearly all countries. On top of that, it has layered on higher tariffs, up to 50% for selected countries, especially those that run a trade surplus with the US. According to the administration, the sweeping tariffs are needed to fix America's trade imbalances. But there is nothing inherently wrong about running a trade deficit. It simply means that American consumers are buying more from the world than the world is buying from America. Moreover, the focus has been solely on the goods trade. That only gives a partial picture. In fact, the US runs a surplus with many of its trading partners in services, exporting software services, education, entertainment, financial and business services. But this fact has been completely ignored. In Singapore's case, we have an FTA with America. We impose 0 tariffs on US imports, and we actually run a trade deficit with the US, meaning we buy more from them than they do from us. If the tariffs were truly reciprocal, and if they were meant to target only those with trade surpluses, then the tariff for Singapore should be 0. But still, we are being subjected to the 10% tariff. We are very disappointed by the US move, especially considering the deep and long-standing friendship between our two countries. These are not actions one does to a friend.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from now. We've been seeing Donald Trump, the president of the US, has been slapping countries with tariffs here and there. And it is crazy to see how many countries are now reaching out and begging the US to lower the tariffs on them. Now, this is whatever Donald Trump wanted. And you can see in his speech, he says that they are all coming out and begging out my and licking my ass. That's the term he uses. Now, it is true. It is true, African countries, it is true, many Caribbean countries are now calling out and begging him, calling him, sir, please, will you please try and lower the tariffs on us? We will do whatever thing you want us to do for you. Now, this is exactly how the US wants to bully its allies. This is exactly how Donald Trump wants all the allies to submit to him. And in this way, he's trying to scare the US allies and all those that have been aligned to the US policies, not working with Russia and China, because he has also slapped China with an 125% tariffs on its goods that enter the US. Now, it is very crazy because I call it crazy because we, the people in Africa, we, the people in the motherland and the people in the Caribbean, have not had some good leaders who will work on things in our own country, that we do not have to bow down to Donald Trump or the US government just because of tariffs. It is so sad because it is us who buys from them most of the time, to be honest. And all they get from Africa is through the back door. They loot resources from Africa and they do not buy things from Africa. That's the bare truth that no one wants to talk about. And when he is trying to slap South Africa with 30% tariffs on its goods, he's trying to do the other way around. You know, whatever happens, many mineral resources leave our countries free to go in the US to be processed, and the final products come to Africa, and we are sold the final products which are actually made from the mineral resources from Africa. Now, it is so sad to see African countries begging Donald Trump, Caribbean countries begging Donald Trump to lower the tariffs on the goods that enter and leave their countries, just because the policies our governments have put in place are very poor. And you must remember, there is a saying by one philosopher from Africa who said that every country that wants to enact, or every country that tries to follow the footsteps of its master, I mean the colonial master, will not actually thrive. It won't actually make it to the top, because all these policies that the US gives our countries, all these are policies that the UK has been giving to Africa, are meant to make Africa and the Caribbean to be poor. And it is time we realize that it is not all about the US. It is not all about the Commonwealth and all these other countries. It is about how great we are willing to go, whatever miles we are willing to go, to make sure that our countries and the people in it are safeguarded, and everything they consume is right and not highly tariffed, because Donald Trump is doing this because he knows we are going to lack otherwise. After slapping China with 125% tariffs, after slapping many countries in Africa and the Caribbean with tariff, he know you will go begging for him. You'll go, and that time he says he's not picking up calls. And the United Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is also trying as much as he can to harass and maybe punish you in a way. So it is so sad to see that our countries are now running and begging out the US maybe to lower the tariffs, to consider us. It should not be that way. We in Africa have everything. In the Caribbean, we have so many things that the US needs to get rid of its products and dispose them to our economy and to our markets. In that case, we are the one who purchase more from the US, not the other way around, because everything they get from Africa, as I said earlier, it is through the back door. They loot from Africa. They do not buy from Africa. So when they hit you with tariffs, they are not affected themselves. In fact, you will pay more for goods to enter your countries from the US. You will pay more for services from the companies, from the US companies. And we really say that Africa, the Caribbean, should actually stand out and wake up. This is a wake up to all of you. Now, Trump is just trying to make you wake up, but no one wants to wake up. They are much, much deep into their sleep that they cannot see even things that blind people can see. That Trump is trying to tell you people, wake up. For how long are you going to depend on the economy of the US? For how long are you going to depend on whatever the US says? For how long are you going to depend on goods coming from the US? I know we actually trade with countries like China, Russia, and all these other countries, but it is high time we put up factories that will help our countries. We put up factories that are going to make sure that our people are elevated to a new step, into a new level. That we put up factories, we put up manufacturing companies that are going to make sure that the textile industry is going to thrive well in our countries, that the assembling industries are going to thrive well in our countries, that the agriculture in Africa does not depend from the fertilizer from Russia and Ukraine, that we do not depend on the wheat that comes from Ukraine. Where did we actually go wrong? Because in Africa we have the best climate to grow some of these crops, but we still import almost everything. I've been saying that it is crazy. Africa imports toothpicks. My country imports toothpicks. And you ask yourself such questions like, where did we actually go wrong? We import everything. We import second-hand clothes. How failed are our economies in the Caribbean and in Africa? How failed are they? That we have an economy where 80% depends from the external markets. And it is so crazy because in Africa, the presidents we have no clue of running the government. They are politicians who have been propelled by greed to actually go and vie for those seats. And by the help of these Western countries, they have been able to loot Africa. They have been able to get these seats because these positions because they allow the Western countries to come and exploit our continent and the Caribbean. You ask yourself, you come from the Caribbean, you don't see manufacturing companies, you do not see assembling companies, that your leaders want everything imported because that's where corruption thrives well. That's where they will add for every single good they import, they'll add some $5 or $6, and that will amount to millions of corruption, of corrupt money. And this is how they have been surviving. And it is the political scenes we have in our countries. The more we get our people to know about these things, the better. And if the little who know about these things, the few who know about these things and keep quiet, then you are actually the cancer of your country. It is time Africa rise up. I saw the video of Donald Trump mocking Africa and mocking the Caribbean about how they are licking his ass, and it is so sad. It is super sad. If we import 80% of the goods we use in our countries, don't you see there is a problem? That's when the US actually gets control of your market. And that's why you can't get rid of the dollar. How are we going to get rid of the dollar when we actually depend on everything from them? We import everything. I said everything, even plastics that can just be manufactured from your own countries. You just need polythene and all this ethane and all these other things. But we still manufacture that, right? We still import that, We import needles. We import everything. So it is time for a wake-up call for all the Caribbean, for all Africans, that we need to change the way Africa has been working out in the Caribbean, because a time comes that our economy is really going to fall apart, because When someone is just slapping you with 10% to 20% and you are crying and inflation is almost killing your country, there is really a big problem, a big one. So this is a wake-up call to all who have watched this video that we need a renaissance. We need people to understand whatever is going on, and we need to bridge the gap between the people and leadership. It is the only way we are going to save ourselves. Thank you so much for having taken the time to watch this video. Appreciate so much, brothers and sisters. If it's your first time on this channel, please consider subscribing, sharing, commenting, and liking. You can also be a member to this channel and be the first to be receiving these good videos. Thank you so much.